At some point every evening, they disappear. One moment your yard is alive with cardinals at the feeder, chickadees flit through the maple tree, and a robin tugs the last worm from the lawn before light fades. And then, in the span of about 20 minutes, they are gone. The feeders are empty, the branches are still. The yard that was full of life an hour ago looks like a different place entirely. Where did they go? Most people assume birds are simply somewhere else in the neighborhood, perhaps vaguely roosting in trees. But the reality is far more specific, far more deliberate, and far stranger than many realize. What happens to your birds between dusk and dawn is one of the least observed and most extraordinary parts of their lives. Tonight, while you are asleep, the birds in your yard will do things that would stop you mid-breath if you could see them. Some will drop their body temperature by degrees to survive the cold. Others will pack together in spaces so small you would not believe a single bird could fit, let alone several. Some, the ones you never think of as travelers, will be flying hundreds of miles above your house in complete darkness. Tonight, we are going into the dark, into what your birds actually do when the light leaves your yard. First, let us explore where your birds actually go when the sun sets. The answer is not where most people imagine, and it is different for almost every species in your yard. The northern cardinal is one of the easiest to track. Cardinals do not roost far from where they spend the day. In the hour before sunset, a male cardinal will move to dense vegetation, typically a thicket, an evergreen shrub, or a tangle of vines. He chooses the densest cover available, not primarily for warmth, but for protection. A sleeping bird is a vulnerable bird, and dense vegetation is the closest thing to invisibility a cardinal can achieve. He will go to the same roost site night after night for weeks or months at a time. If you have a thick holly bush or a dense arborvitae hedge in your yard, there is a reasonable chance a cardinal has been sleeping in it every night this winter without you knowing. The chickadee's nighttime strategy is different and considerably more surprising. On cold nights, black-capped chickadees enter a state called regulated hypothermia, deliberately lowering their body temperature by up to 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Their metabolism slows dramatically, and their heart rate drops. They are not fully asleep in the way we understand sleep. They are closer to a controlled shutdown, conserving enough energy to survive temperatures that would otherwise require burning fat reserves they cannot afford to lose. A chickadee weighs about 11 grams. On a cold winter night, the energy budget of that tiny bird is so tight that without regulated hypothermia, it might not survive to morning. With it, it does, night after night, through temperatures that would kill an unprotected animal of that size within hours. The roost site matters too. Chickadees find cavities, old woodpecker holes, gaps in tree bark, and abandoned nest boxes. They sleep inside them. The walls of the cavity trap the warmth of the bird's body and reduce heat loss dramatically. A chickadee in a cavity on a cold night is operating with extraordinary physiological precision. Next, we explore the communal roost, when birds pack together to survive. Some of the most dramatic nighttime behavior in your yard involves species you would never expect to be social sleepers. The eastern bluebird is one of the most striking examples. Bluebirds are territorial during the breeding season. A male bluebird defends his nest box aggressively from other males and will not tolerate close approach. But in winter, that same bluebird will squeeze into a nest box with up to a dozen other bluebirds and sleep pressed against them for warmth. The territorial rules of the breeding season are entirely suspended. The calculation in winter is simple. Shared body heat means survival. Researchers have documented nest boxes in the eastern United States that contain 12 to 15 bluebirds on a single cold winter night. Birds that during the day would not perch within 30 feet of each other, sharing a 6-inch cavity without apparent conflict. The house wren does something similar, though less dramatically. Carolina wrens, which do not migrate and face genuine cold survival challenges, will sometimes share roost cavities with other wrens. This behavior is a stark contrast to their daytime territoriality, which would make such sharing seem impossible. What this tells you about your yard is this: the nest boxes and dense shrubs you maintain are not just breeding infrastructure. They are survival infrastructure. On the coldest nights of winter, those structures are the difference between birds that wake up in your yard tomorrow morning and birds that do not. Now let's explore how birds navigate the dark and what they are listening for. A sleeping bird is not fully switched off. It is operating in a mode that most people never think about. Researchers call it unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. Many birds can sleep with one eye open, literally. One hemisphere of the brain enters a sleep state, while the other remains active and alert, the open eye scanning for predators. The sleeping and waking hemispheres switch periodically, so both sides get rest, but the bird is never completely unconscious. Cornell Lab of Ornithology researchers studying mallard ducks first documented this clearly. Ducks sleeping in a row at the edge of the group kept the outward-facing eye open, monitoring the environment. Meanwhile, ducks in the center of the group slept with both eyes closed. The vigilance was distributed across the flock. The same principle applies to the birds in your yard. When a chickadee is roosting in a tree cavity on a winter night, it is not fully asleep. It is monitoring. The snap of a branch, the scrape of a claw on bark, the presence of a predator moving through the yard, all can trigger immediate alertness. This is why the sounds of your yard at night are not just background. The great horned owl that calls from the oak tree at 10 p.m. is being heard by every bird roosting within range. The alarm call of a robin flushed by a cat at midnight travels to sleeping chickadees nearby. The nighttime yard has a sensory network running through it, even when it looks completely still. There is something worth sitting with in that. The yard you look at through your window at midnight, dark, still, apparently empty, is not empty at all. It is full of birds in a state of active, distributed awareness, hidden in cavities and dense shrubs. They monitor the dark with one eye, while the other hemisphere of the brain recovers, ready to move in a fraction of a second if information signals a change. They are there, you simply cannot see them, and they are paying far more attention to the night than you are. Fourth, the birds you never knew were nocturnal. Most people think of their backyard birds as entirely daytime creatures. The cardinal at the feeder at sunrise, the chickadee through the morning, the robin on the lawn all afternoon. Nighttime in this mental model belongs to owls and not much else. But several birds that you consider daytime yard visitors are doing something at night that would genuinely surprise you. The American robin is one of them. Robins are early risers, often the first bird singing before dawn. What most people do not know is that robins are highly responsive to artificial light at night. In urban and suburban areas, robins in well-lit yards will begin singing hours before dawn, sometimes as early as 1 or 2 in the morning. The artificial light triggers the same hormonal response as natural sunrise. If you have ever heard birdsong in the middle of the night in a lit neighborhood, it was almost certainly a robin. The mourning dove presents a different surprise. Doves are among the heaviest sleepers in the backyard bird community during the day, slow-moving, unhurried, seemingly oblivious. But mourning doves are capable of remarkable nocturnal alertness when threatened. A dove that has been sitting motionless on a branch all afternoon will launch into fast whistling flight in complete darkness if a predator approaches. The wing whistle of a flushing dove, that distinctive high-pitched sound as the wings cut the air, is itself a communication signal. It alerts other doves to danger even in the dark. And then there are the birds that on certain nights are not in your yard at all. Fifth, we look at what is flying over your house right now. This is the part that changes the way you think about the night sky above your neighborhood. Twice a year, the night sky above your house fills with birds, not dozens, not hundreds. On peak migration nights, especially in late April and early May, and again in September and October, countless birds journey across vast distances. The number of birds crossing a single point in the eastern United States can reach into the millions on a single night. These are not exotic species from distant continents, but often the very birds you see in your own backyard. The wood thrush that visits your yard in summer, for instance, likely spent the winter in Central America. And right now, in late April, it may be flying north at night, high above your home. The ruby-throated hummingbird that will soon grace your feeder in May might have just completed an incredible journey. It may have crossed the Gulf of Mexico in a single, non-stop flight of 900 miles. Navigating by the stars and Earth's magnetic field, it burns fat reserves equivalent to a human running back-to-back marathons. Cornell Lab's free migration monitoring system, Birdcast, tracks these movements in real time using Weather Service radar. On a peak migration night, radar images of the eastern United States reveal what resembles an enormous weather system moving northward. Yet this is not rain or clouds, but billions of birds reflecting the radar signals. The biological mass of migration is so immense that meteorologists had to learn to distinguish these radar signals from precipitation. This phenomenon is occurring above your house tonight, and on many nights this spring. The birds that will spend summer in your yard, singing from your trees and feeding from your feeders, are passing over you right now in darkness. They navigate a continent using light that remains invisible to human eyes. Following ancient paths, their ancestors have traveled for millions of years. As dusk falls, your yard may grow quiet, the feeders empty, and the branches still. But what you observe in that seemingly empty yard is not an absence, but a profound concealment. The cardinal may be nestled deep within your holly bush. The chickadee finds refuge in a woodpecker hole in the oak, allowing its body temperature to drop and its metabolism to slow. It conserves energy, pulling back to the minimum required to survive until morning. And somewhere above your roofline, thousands of birds you won't see until May are continuing their journey. This happens every night. You have been living beside this unseen world for years without ever knowing its full shape. Now you hold a deeper understanding.